sailor lived alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. His life was a chain of repetitive days, each indistinguishable from the one before. His work as a freelance graphic designer kept him in front of his computer for long hours, in isolation, broken only by the distant sounds of traffic or the rain tapping against the window. He had no wide social circle. Most of his friendships existed online. One hot summer night, while browsing a small photography forum, a new account caught his attention. The user went by the name Marisol and posted breathtaking photos of beaches, water so clear it looked like crystal, sand as soft and white as powdered sugar. What intrigued him most wasn't just the beauty of the images, but the captions that came with them. They spoke of a remote Caribbean island called Santa Mora. The place seemed like a fragment of paradise. Their connection began with comments on her posts, then private messages, and eventually daily conversations. Marisol would tell him about the island's shores, its tropical forests filled with rare birds, and the sunsets that painted the sea in molten gold. Over time, those messages became essential to Ethan's life, like a lifeline pulling him out of his grey world. He stayed up late to talk to her, waking early to see if she had sent him anything new. What began as casual conversation slowly turned into an unspoken promise that they would meet. The thought of traveling there had seemed far-fetched at first, until one day he decided to make it real. Ethan began planning. He sold his old car, some of his equipment, and gathered enough money for the trip. He booked a flight to one of the larger Caribbean islands, from where he would take a small boat to Santa Mora. From the moment he stepped into the harbor, something felt wrong. The air was stifling despite the sea breeze. Fishermen sat in silence, their eyes fixed on their boats, avoiding the gaze of strangers. There were no smiles, as if the sea had taken something from them that could never be returned. On the boat ride, the weather shifted with alarming speed. The sun, bright and warm at first, vanished behind thick, black clouds rolling in from the horizon. A cold wind rose, sharp and damp, as if it came from the ocean's deepest trenches. The waves grew, tossing the boat violently. Saltwater spray stung his face. The captain said nothing throughout, his eyes locked on the horizon as if searching for something he hoped not to see. Then, as suddenly as the storm began, the sea grew calm again. Too calm. The surface smoothed into a perfect mirror. The cries of seabirds were gone, and the only sound left was the engine's low rumble. Santa Mora emerged from the haze, a mass of green jungle surrounded by blinding white beaches, the water shifting from pale turquoise to dark blue. Yet as the boat neared shore, Ethan began to notice the stillness. There were no fishermen hauling in nets, no children running across the sand. The palm trees swayed slowly, unnaturally slow for the faint breeze. The houses along the beach, built from wood and coral stone, looked old, untouched by time for decades. The few people he saw on shore didn't speak. They simply stared, faces expressionless, eyes tracking his every move. Their gaze wasn't curious, it was knowing, as if they understood something he didn't. He was led to a small house at the edge of the forest, overlooking the sea. It was tidy and clean, but the air inside was heavy with the faint smell of salt and dampness. Even with the windows open, no wind entered. At night, sleep was elusive. Strange sounds floated in from outside, not the usual noise of tropical animals, but faint, broken whispers, as if the sea itself was speaking. One night, he woke suddenly and froze at what he saw from his window. Marisol was walking on the surface of the water. Her steps made no ripples. Her body shimmered faintly under the moonlight, as though covered in a delicate layer of scales. She moved slowly toward the horizon until the darkness swallowed her. In the days that followed, the island began to change. Paths he had taken earlier disappeared. Some houses seemed to vanish entirely. The jungle looked as if it were closing its trails to him. When he tried to speak to the villagers, they answered only with silence and those same long, fixed stares. On his third night, the electricity cut out without warning. He stepped onto the porch and froze. The sea was glowing, not with moonlight, but with a strange, otherworldly blue radiance rising from beneath the waves. At the water's edge stood Marisol, but she no longer looked as she had before. Her body was taller, her skin smooth and glistening with a bluish tint. Her eyes were larger than they should be, shining with cold light. Her mouth hung half open, revealing rows of tiny, sharp teeth. Behind her, the villagers stood in silence. Their skin had the same faint shimmer. They began moving toward him, slowly, deliberately, closing the distance like predators, certain their prey had nowhere to run. Ethan had only two choices: run or surrender. The sea lay ahead of him, the forest behind, and the creatures, those who had seemed human just days ago, were closing in. The air was thick with salt and dampness, and the sound of waves mingled with a strange whispering, like a call from the depths. Despite the fear clawing at his chest, he remembered the bag he hadn't touched since arriving. Inside was an old professional camera, a gift from his late father. It had a powerful flash attached, the kind used for night photography. In one swift motion, he pulled it out and aimed the flash directly at Marisol and the creatures. The light burst forth, white, blinding, like lightning ripping through a clear night. Marisol screamed, but it was not a human sound. It was the screech of metal tearing against metal. She staggered back, covering her face. The others scattered like wind-blown leaves, some diving into the sea, others vanishing into the dark forest.
As they withdrew, the eerie blue glow faded from the water, replaced by the calm silver of the moon. Ethan felt a crushing weight lift from his chest, as though the island itself had just taken its first breath in years. He reached the shore and found, as if by fate, a small boat tied to a rotting post. It rocked gently, waiting. He pushed it into the water, jumped in, and rowed with all the strength he had left. The island receded behind him. Just before it disappeared from sight, he saw Marisol standing on the shore again. Her face was no longer twisted. She looked as she had in her photos, beautiful, calm, watching him in silence. He couldn't tell if she was saying goodbye or giving him a warning, but deep inside he felt something strange. Perhaps he had not only saved himself, but freed her from a curse. When dawn broke, a fishing vessel appeared on the horizon. The fisherman pulled him aboard without many questions. It was clear he had been through something he wasn't ready to speak of. He sat at the ship's edge, watching the horizon. The sea stretched endlessly before him, no longer a place of fear, but a memory, a battle between darkness and light, one he had survived and won.
If you have ever experienced something strange, something you couldn't explain, something that still keeps you awake at night, then we want to hear from you. This channel isn't just about telling mysterious stories. It's about uncovering them with you. If you have a true, eerie, or unexplainable experience, whether it happened last week or years ago, don't keep it to yourself. Share your story with us, and you might become part of our next video. Help us explore the unknown together, because here, you're not just a viewer, you're part of the mystery.